Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Amber Ledberry, the Outreach Coordinator at Climate Action Now. It'll be just a few moments while people continue to gather. While we're waiting for everyone to join, I invite you to answer our icebreaker question that you'll see pop up in the chat in just a moment. Our question today is, where are you joining from, and what's a climate win happening where you live? If you're feeling up for it, please also share your video so we can all see each other. We will be recording this event and it will be available publicly online. So if you do not wish to appear in any shared content, please keep your camera off. We'll be sending out the recording in an email tomorrow. I'm very grateful that everyone is here today because even though the news has been upsetting lately, there is still hopeful information about the climate. People just don't hear enough about it. So thank you for joining us today to get your August monthly dose of climate hope. I'll now turn things over to Kaylee Beam, Director of Content at Climate Action Now.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Kaylee Beam, and I'm the Director of Content at Climate Action Now. As you get settled, keep those icebreaker answers coming. I'm excited to see many different climate wins flooding the chat, and hopefully you can look at some of them and get a little extra dose of hope today too. So before we transition into the live interview, we're going to warm up by taking an action together, inspired by our featured speaker's work. If you've been to any of our recent events, you already know the drill. We'll be using the Can Action Carousel to take action today. This web-based version of the Climate Action Now app makes it easy to send well-researched, personalized messages to business leaders and political decision makers. It offers an endless stream of actions, measures your personal impact, and lets you earn points toward the planting of real trees. And the best part is that any environmental organization, local chapter of a larger group, or community group that wants to scale up their impact can get one, whether they have their own website or not. So let me just share my screen and show you just how easy it is to take action with the carousel. You should be seeing it shortly if you aren't already. There we go. So here's today's action. Tell your state leaders to accelerate solar power buildouts. And as you'll see, it just takes 3 clicks to take an action. So first click do it now, or in my case, do it again. I'm just going to contact someone different than I reached out to earlier. You can choose how you're going to contact the decision maker you're reaching out to, so I'm going to send an email. And because the platform has my address, it knows who my state, federal, and in some cases, local officials are. So you have the option of kind of expanding this text box, doing some editing, and getting it to a place where you're happy with it. Once it looks good, just hit done, hit send message, and just like that, you've taken action. Earlier, I mentioned earning points towards the planting of a real tree. And so far, the Climate Action Now community has actually planted over 640,000 trees together, I think, which is pretty incredible. All right, so if you want to take action on your computer today, we're going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat. Hopefully it won't get buried by all of your great answers to the icebreakers. So I'm going to drop that in there. But if you prefer to take action on your phone or tablet, we also have a QR code for you. So you should be seeing that now. Just point your camera at it, wait for that pop-up to appear, and tap on it to get to the carousel. Of course, if you've never used the carousel, you'll have to put in some basic information to take action, like your name, address, and email. You'll also be encouraged to set a personalized message. And for those of you who already have app accounts, but are using the carousel for the first time, don't worry, you should not have to start from scratch. When you enter your email, you'll be prompted to enter a verification code, and once you do that, it will transfer all of your progress from the app to the carousel. So I'm finally done talking. That's all from me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn my camera into the action slide so you still have access to it. Now I'm going to hand things back over to Amber to introduce our speakers, both of whom perhaps need no introduction, but we're going to do that anyway. And we're going to get things started. So over to you, Amber.
Thanks so much, Kaylee. All right, so today, Sam Matikos, the editor-in-chief at Climate Action Now, is going to be talking with our expert guest speaker, Bill McKibben. Sam authors the Dose of Climate Hope Substack newsletter for Climate Action Now. Dose of Climate Hope illustrates new technologies, policy solutions, people, and trends that give us reason to be hopeful about the climate. Bill McKibben is a renowned climate activist, author, and the founder of Third Act, an organization that mobilizes people over 60 for climate injustice. He co-founded 350.org, the first global grassroots climate campaign, and helped launch the fossil fuel divestment movement, now the largest anti-corporate campaign in history. A prolific writer, Bill's work has appeared in outlets like the New York The New Yorker and Rolling Stone. His 1989 book, The End of Nature, was the first book on climate change written for a general audience. He's received the Right Livelihood Award, the Gandhi Peace Prize, and honorary degrees from 20 universities for his contributions to the climate movement. We'll now transition into our live interview. As you hear from Bill and Sam, please type any questions you'd like to contribute to the discussion into the chat. Over to you, Sam.
Hi, I am incredibly excited to be here today with the great Bill McKibben, the OG climate activist essentially in America, the guy who's been working on this tirelessly since the 1980s. And this is my third time talking with Bill. I feel really grateful that he's agreed to share his time with our organization. And daily, and he, Mr. McKibben's writing lately at his Substack, The Crucial Years, has been, well, electrifying. People often say on fire, but that's really not the appropriate metaphor for so absolutely electrifying, like consistently covering with some of the most important stuff happening in the world with a scale and an urgency and a voice that really no one else has. So there's so much I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about some of the national case studies and frontiers of the electric revolution, China, Australia, Pakistan. I want to talk about agrivoltaics, want to talk about decentralized grids emerging, want to talk about oil as the Achilles heel in the Russo-Ukrainian War, one of my favorite of your recent articles. But let's start with sort of the fact that we know we have a big bad, climate change, the wildfire smoke, the heat waves, everything. And let's talk about how, as your brilliant recent book, Here Comes the Sun, highlighted, we now also have a big good, the electric revolution. We have these rising trends of both renewable energy and global heat sort of racing each other for the future of the world and civilization. So could you tell me about that sort of double vision of this moment?
So first of all, what a pleasure to be with you all. And what a pleasure to be able to say publicly, Sam, many thanks for your work, especially over the last months. I was completely enchanted with the your Africa travelogue.
Thank you so much.
And especially the parts about planting mangroves, which I'd never really understood the whole process by which people were bringing back these mangrove swamps and things. And it was fascinating to read about. I got to be in Africa to do some reporting for the New Yorker about the kind of last electrification wave 6 or 7 years ago at the sort of really beginning of this solar build out. And what a pleasure to see that it has taken huge root there and is lots and lots and lots of momentum. So that was very exciting reporting, and thank you for it. Yeah,
thank you so much.
Let's talk about the big bad and big good. There's no way to avoid the fact that we're now deeply in the midst of the climate crisis. The stuff we started warning about in the 1980s is now breaking over our heads. And I mean, this summer, as we just found out that July was the hottest month in US history, for instance. And, it's very bad right now, witness the wildfires and floods happening across the planet. The next 18 months are going to be much, much, much worse. The El Nino that's now breaking over our heads in the Pacific, really, its effects aren't yet really felt, but they're about to be, is on a scale that really blows your mind. There's reporting in the last couple of days, some of the most recent papers are indicating that it may turn out to be the biggest event of its kind in the last 500 to 1,000 years. So it's going to add a huge amount of heat that's been stored up in the oceans very quickly to the already overheated atmosphere. We're going to see temperatures far higher than humans have ever experienced in the history of our species, and the results will be bad, categorically. Not only are we going to see an uptick in the chaos like fires and floods, but we're now starting to do, as you know, systemic damage to things like the jet stream and the Gulf Stream. Those tipping points are very real and very dire. So there's nothing any of us are going to do right now to ward off the El Nino or anything else that we've already set in motion. These systems have big momentum. We've cast the die a long time ago on what we're seeing now. What we can do, however, is keep things from getting worse than they need to. And we can do it in a way that will produce a more democratic, more peaceful, and more egalitarian world on the other side, even if it's sadly a hotter world as well that we're dealing with. And that's because, as you point out, the one big good thing that's happening on this decade on planet Earth is the rapid fall in the price of energy from the sun. And with it, the rapid beginnings of that deployment in places around the world. I just, I finally succumbed and agreed to do a TED Talk this year, and it got released last week on YouTube. And that was sort of the whole point of that, was just to say there is one big good thing happening, big enough to take a bite out of the climate crisis and out of the authoritarianism crisis. And so it's not going to happen automatically. Markets and prices will get us eventually where we need to go, but eventually doesn't help us because the climate test is a timed test. And so our job, I think the one that you and I and Climate Action Now and everybody else have undertaken, is to try and figure out how we speed up that process. We're going to run the world on sun and wind in 40 years because it's as close to free as we're ever going to get. But if it takes us anything like 40 years to get there, then the planet we run on sun and wind will be a broken one. What lies in the balance is whether or not we can prevent some of that breakage. And I think that we can. And I think that part of that prevention strategy is to spread this good news as widely as we can, so that people understand that there are really powerful tools for the first time. This is the first set of scalable tools that we have possessed in the 40-year public fight over climate change.
Yes, exactly. And this is just what you just said. Like, it is dire, the situation one with the El Nino. But the other half of what you just said, the big good, just like 10 years ago, what you just said would have seemed like a wildly optimistic thing to be saying. Like, well, the economics are definitely on our side now, no matter how stupid the politics get. Like, that's a big shift. And that's thanks to like years and years of innovation and European and American governments incentivizing clean energy and engineers increasingly in China innovating on clean energy. And there's been so much work that has led this to be the cheapest source of
I
electricity.
think that that's really important point to get across. It's been a combination of sort of really powerful combination of activism and engineering that got us where we are. For instance, 25 years ago, at the turn of the century, the Green Party held the balance of power in the German parliament. They used the leverage that gave them to demand a expensive subsidy for solar power for Germans who were willing to put panels on their roofs. In essence, that subsidy was the thing that paid the Chinese to begin the process of bringing down the cost, doing the engineering, iterative engineering that has sharply reduced the cost of solar power. That combination of activism and engineering is what we need to continue to figure out going forward.
Yeah, and we have like, it's people always want to reduce stuff to, well, is it good, is it bad, or is it neutral? Well, it's better than it used to be in terms of clean energy, worse than it used to be in terms of climate impacts, but we have moved. Like, we have made meaningful progress in making clean energy the cheapest source of electricity in history. And we're starting to see, not so much in the US, sadly, but you've seen this, incredible new paradigms arising. The folks at Emble, the great think tank that you've consulted with, have sort of came up with a really snappy sort of forward description for just how big a deal this is. This what Getting energy from the sun, the giant nuclear reactor right 93 million miles away, that sends power not via the Strait of Hormuz, as you have so as you have coined that phrase, energy from heaven instead of from hell. That might be like an upshift in available energy to humanity as big as like the first industrial evolution of fossil fuels. Like Embel's sort of human history in the future might be periodized as like foragers, farmers, fossils, photovoltaics. We might be entering sort of the fourth great age of humanity with just this new massive source of energy.
And our job is to make sure that that happens fast enough that our age isn't known instead as the age of climate collapse and overheating, because that is at least as real a possibility at the
Yeah.
moment. That's what makes this moment so remarkable. We're poised on, between two vastly different outcomes, and we have to figure out how to do everything we can to change the odds. We're not in control necessarily of the outcome, I will just add. I mean, physics is a very powerful force. The momentum that we have stuck in this system is large. There are scientists who think we've waited too long to start, but the best science indicates we have a real window still open, albeit beginning to close, not to stop global warming, too late for that, but certainly still to shave tenths of a degree off how hot the planet gets. And as you know, at this point, every tenth of a degree that we raise the temperature moves 100 million of our brothers and sisters from a relatively safe climate zone to a relatively perilous one. So this is the biggest undertaking in human history, and it could be the most exciting. We finally have a group project that we could, if we wanted to, take on across the world together. The quick electrification and solarization of the planet is the most exciting. I mean, we're 60 years out, just about, from the last huge technological project that this country undertook, landing a man on the moon. That was, in a divisive and chaotic time, a unifying thing. Now we have an even more interesting project, one that could unite the entire planet. It's not putting a guy on the moon, it's bringing the sun down to Earth in order to solve the deepest set of problems we've ever faced, and to solve them in a way that produces not just relief from the worst of climate change, but that produces abundant possibility for people to have control over their own lives. Think how nice and peaceful it would be to no longer live on a planet where we depend on these scattered deposits of fossil fuel that we have spent the last 200 years fighting wars over, that have been creating insane oligarchs for decades, that we can now dispense with.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing. That's one of the things that excites me most about this. Not only is this saving the world, but in other imaginary save the world scenarios, like if you stop an asteroid from hitting or something, it doesn't like make the world hugely better. It just stops it getting massively worse. The renewable energy both stops the world getting massively worse and makes it massively better. It's not just the energy of a stable planet; it's the energy of peace and freedom. All the worst regimes in the world, very much including the current U.S. administration, are really propped up by just a tide of sort of fossil fuel money, and the potential for people to take ownership of their own electricity source just challenges our very notions of like what a grid is, and we're seeing in places like Pakistan. I haven't been there, but I also saw it in Africa, like very, very often, millions of people now, their full source of electricity, or their full source of electricity that isn't just 1 hour a day, mostly blackouts, is their own solar panel, panel and little house battery, their own solar panel and little house battery, and maybe electric motorcycle that's theirs and can't be taken away by geopolitics.
Or in many cases in Africa, just as beautifully, is a community microgrid.
Yeah.
I love those projects where you
Yeah.
put 70 panels on the edge of town, run a rudimentary wiring kind of hut to hut, and everybody turns it on at the same day. There's a kind of learning curve that people go through together about what it means to have. I remember being in community in remote part of northern Ghana that the day before had turned on their community microgrid. And I was sitting with the elders around talking, and I was very hot, so I was very grateful that they kept handing me cold bottles of water. It took me, in my clueless Western way, about 15 minutes to figure out why they were so proud to be handing me cold bottles of water. Until the day before, there had not been anything cold in that village because there had never been a refrigerator. Yes, the most important use for that refrigerator is storing vaccines. And nowhere I went anywhere in Africa did I ever meet a vaccine denier, thank God. But it was also nice to have cold water, and it was nice to see kids eating ice cream.
Yeah, yeah, and it is changing people's lives. It is, and it's and what you said about the vaccines, and also just cooling. Clean energy doesn't just help stop climate change getting worse; it helps people survive climate change. Just one phone in a village getting charged with a solar panel can warn people of extreme weather. There's now increasingly like some agricultural information being spread on peer-to-peer like mobile phone networking devices in Africa. There's like vaccine cold chains that can help people not die of malaria as mosquito ranges expand as things get warmer. Like there's an incredible sort of I keep using phrases like win-win or win-win-win or win-win-win-win-win in my newsletter until it gets ridiculous, just because there's so many good things that renewable energy does. And one thing that I'd love to hear, like, this is obviously a dark and tragic event in human history, the Russia-Ukrainian war, but you've pointed out that it's also really showcased, and the Iran war lately has done this too, the inherent fragility of fossil fuels, not just economically, but sort of strategically. And
so that's right. There's two parts of that story, right? So
yeah,
we're learning in Iran, the flow of fossil fuels is, I mean, people used to say, oh, solar and wind power are intermittent. Turns out the thing that's intermittent is the flow of oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz,
yeah,
which gets shut off very, very easily. Batteries have made sun and wind not really intermittent power at all anymore. So there's that, and the effects of that are enormous. We're not feeling them anywhere near as much here as people are in Asia, where fuel rationing is in effect, even more devastating. Lots and lots of places did not get enough fertilizer for this planting season. They're going to be feeling the effects of that at the next harvest, which is going to coincide with the worst effects of this El Nino, often leading to drought across Asia and Africa. It's going to be a tough year. So that's the one danger of reliance on fossil fuel. Somebody can turn off the spigot pretty easily. Nobody has a on-off switch for the sun, thank heaven. The second problem, though, as you point out, is the one that the Ukrainians are busily demonstrating now in Russia almost every day, which is that a fossil fuel system is dependent on really expensive, really big, really exposed nodes for operation. They've managed to hit with cheap drones something like half the oil refining capacity in Russia. And it takes a long time to get this stuff back online. It's expensive. There are now, gas lines all across Russia, reminiscent of when, my boyhood in the American suburbs in the 1970s during the OPEC crises, probably worse than that. So, the strategic planners have got to be thinking, I'd a lot rather have a system that doesn't have those failure points. I'd a lot rather have a system that depends on all kinds of solar panels. Yeah, a missile can take out a solar panel or 10 or 20 or 30, but that's not that big a deal. And it doesn't take very long to put them back up. I mean, I've got solar panels all over the roof. Theoretically, someone could take a ladder, put it against the wall of my house, climb up there with a hammer and break them. I would annoy the hell out of me, but it wouldn't cause a cascading blackout across the East Coast. It wouldn't spew deadly solar particles into the atmosphere. It would obviously upset my dog a good deal, but um, it's a very different situation.
There's an inherent resilience to this technology. Ukraine is increasingly building like little microgrids, solar and battery for their schools and hospitals, as Russia keeps targeting the old fossil and nuclear powered grid. And like you said, like solar and wind and batteries, electrotech is now the least intermittent power source, even apart from the fact that wars can block or blow up fossil fuel infrastructure, as we are seeing in the European heat waves right now. Coal plants in Poland and nuclear reactors in France are shutting down due to the lack of cooling water in the river. So
Yeah.
like so renewable energy is now just better on every conceivable metric.
Well,
Just
yes, it's a pretty good bet that if you're having a deadly heat wave that's drying up your rivers, there's probably a lot of sunshine. So,
yeah,
you know, yeah. Uh, Look, the just inherently better uh, energy from the sun and the wind is inherently better in many, many, many ways. And happily, so are the things that it powers. Um, one of the things that's really shifted here is the idea that there's a huge amount of sacrifice involved in the transitions that we need to make. Um, um,
exactly.
Look, people, I mean, Americans consume more than we should in lots of ways. But some of the things that we consume are good things that we're going to continue to want. Mobility, heating and cooling, the ability to cook food. And these things are much more easily accomplished now with the suite of technologies emerging that use electricity. Think about a car. I've spent most of my life driving internal combustion engines because that's what there were for most of my long life. And think about the incredible complexity of that system. Someone has to now drill for oil miles beneath the ocean in most cases to get the oil, get it somehow on shore, refine it in this vast machinery, get it to the gas station, load it into the tank of a car that has the engine has several thousand moving parts to produce this constant ongoing fire that keeps it going, as opposed to you have a solar panel. I have a solar panel on my roof and it connects to the car in the garage, which has 20 moving parts in the engine. It goes faster if you want to go fast than my old car does. It's quieter than the old car does. It requires almost nothing in the way of maintenance. A gas station is now just a depot for Diet Dr. Pepper. There's no other use in. Um, Even better than the EV is the e-bike. I'm sure you saw some examples in Africa. I think that's going to be the revolutionary mobility technology of our time because it's taken something that was already elegant in human scale, the bicycle, and now it just is a bicycle that has no hills. And so for a nickel's worth of electricity, you can go 10, 20, 30, 40 miles. I mean, that's as close to powered by angels as we're going to get. Um, the heat pump in your house is more efficient and cheaper to run than the bulky furnace in the basement that requires someone to keep constantly delivering more oil or propane to make it work. I'm the cook in my house and I've used an induction cooktop for years, $60 online. Um, um, I can't tell you exactly how it works, magnets, but it boils water twice as fast as the gas stove in the kitchen. And it reduces in half the chance that your kid or your grandkid is going to get asthma because you no longer have an open campfire in the middle of your house. So the availability of technological solutions combined with our ability to figure out how to campaign for those things and make them happen, that's what will or will not make the difference here now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the technology is getting so much better so fast. Like stuff that people were saying, well, this isn't going to decarbonize. We'll need like hydrogen or some other vulnerable fuel for this. Like stuff people were saying was not going to be electrifiable 5 years ago is now getting electrified.
Yeah.
China's testing like electric 18 wheelers, like battery swap networks for heavy
Yeah,
trucking.
they're not testing them.
Yeah.
Some huge percentage of the long haul trucks sold in China last year were electric. I
Yeah,
mean,
like
that
20%.
technology
Yeah,
is
testing was a bad word choice. They're
ready to go.
using. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're proving.
So
Yeah.
I mean, China started testing medium range aircraft with
Yeah.
that, which I mean, that is crazy. Um, and yet it seems increasingly within the realm of the possible.
Exactly. Like electric flight, the last frontier, the one thing everyone's like will definitely need. I actually just saw just today that the very first use of electric aircraft by emergency first responders in the US just happened in North Carolina. An EVTOL was used by like Hyde County to send a paramedic to like someone having a heart attack. And that's, an all electric aircraft, basically a big drone that went out and saved someone's life in America. That has already happened.
I confess, it, what I really want is the return of blimps for
That would be so cool. Yeah.
transcontinental travel, because I like the idea that you could just slowly cross the Atlantic looking down from the bottom of your blimp. But I may not live long enough to see it. We'll see.
Yeah, I would love to see blimps too. I have seen in Rwanda and China some really cool electric flights happening this year. Like China's testing sort of electric flying
Well,
cars essentially in Guangzhou.
that thing that
Yeah.
you wrote about in Rwanda, where these guys are using drones to send out medical supplies to clinics across the country, and it takes it like, what was it, like 45 minutes was
Yeah.
the longest flight because these things fly fast.
Yeah. And it's
So
all electric.
somebody gets bit by the wrong snake, and you dispatch some anti-venom in a drone, and 45 minutes later, someone's jabbing it in the arm of the person. I mean,
Exactly.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like the electric, like you said, this is not a question of sacrifice anymore, not in the least. Like this is a question of will your government block you from getting all the cool new stuff? Like what we're fighting for is the right to access the world's best technology, because the world's best technology in every category, from cooking to mobility, all that stuff you just said, is electric now and an improvement on fossil fuels.
Right, which is great unless you own a oil well or a coal mine. Then
Yeah,
not so great. And so that's what the battle is about. And let's be clear, it is a real battle, and one that in this country we're losing at the moment. We can find examples of people continuing to put up solar farms and things, but they have managed to blunt the growth of clean energy in this country in the last 2 years. We would be much, much further along, which means that we have to figure out how to organize as activists, and we have to figure out how to organize electorally. I mean,
absolutely.
most of my time at the moment this year, since it's an even numbered year, is taken up with, I see some of my colleagues from Third Act on this call. We're out all over the country doing everything we can to elect people uh, who are in favor of a working climate and a working
Yeah,
democracy. And
absolutely.
going to be close.
Yeah. And the thing that I keep trying to do with my writings, and keep hammering home, and that and that you sort of include in your broader perspective, is not just that a better world is possible, but that a better world is already happening, already here, just not evenly distributed. Like in Australia right now, they've started 3 hours of free electricity per day in like half the countries, the most populated states. And like in America, electricity bills are going through the roof. In Australia, they're going to zero. Like this just because there's so much solar in the middle of the day. And they're the world leaders in adopting home batteries. So you can just fill up during the 3 free hours and pay nothing to power your house for the whole day when you fill up your battery in the 3 hours. So it's
Yeah.
just this whole new paradigm available. And I think if people realize that's what the the fossil fueled politicians or keeping them from having in America. I think that's an important message to
Well,
mobilize.
Sam, we better get on it fast because otherwise Australia will use up all the sunshine and there won't be anything
Oh,
left for the rest of us. So,
oh yeah, that's yeah. Oh, the Australians might leverage their solar adoption to block sunshine supplies. Like, yeah, it is just a movement from a scarcity mindset to um a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. There's just like we can have nice things with this source of power. There is enough to go around.
amen.
Yeah. And one thing I also really want to emphasize, and that I think a lot of people don't understand, even in the environmental movement, there's some influencers that are increasing, often fossil fuel funded influencers, trying to sort of push a wedge between clean energy and like biodiversity. And that is overwhelmingly fictitious. Like in many, many, many cases, from agrivoltaics growing crops under solar panels, ecovoltaics growing like meadows and wildflowers, the Chinese are like putting solar panels in the desert and the Kabuchi Desert on like a massive scale and like helping block desertification by providing shade and moisture to plants. Overwhelmingly, clean offshore wind farms become artificial reefs with stuff going on the turbines. Overwhelmingly, clean energy growth is not just not harmful, not just less harmful, but actively beneficial for biodiversity in the area in most cases.
Yeah. And we should continue to make that case and to make that as true as possible.
Exactly, both.
Every solar farm that we build should come with a community benefit agreement that, among other things, makes sure that it's being used for good agrivoltaics and things, because that makes it much, much easier to get people to understand the importance and why they want one in their community.
Yeah, exactly. And this sort of an increase like this sort of an increasingly common sort of attack, increasingly in rural areas, that like solar panels take away farmland or something. And like, no, they don't. But like also they are good for farms and for farmers over and over with more and more
Yes,
crops.
farmers farmers like them. Sometimes people who retired to the countryside
Yeah.
don't want to look at them. That's not okay. Um,
Yeah.
Partly it's just our eyes are we I've spent my life in rural America, so I have a pretty good sense of what I'm looking at. But most people, I'm afraid, when they drive by, say, 500 acres of corn, don't realize that A, it's a biological desert because you poured herbicides and pesticides on it. And B, there's a 50% chance that it's being used to grow gasoline. That's what half the acreage in America, corn acreage in America, is used for, is ethanol. It produces 3% of America's energy. If we took that same 30 million acres and just put solar panels on them, we'd produce about 100% of our energy. That gives you some sense of the relative efficiency of solar panels and photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a miracle, but it's not a particularly efficient one. A solar cell really is. Now, we don't want to just take those 30 million acres and cover Indiana and Iowa stem to stern with solar panels. We don't need to do that. We've got lots of rooftops and parking lots, but we should not worry if we take some farmland and use it to grow a crop, clean electrons, that we are badly in need of and use a lot of.
Exactly, and it's going to be better for local wildlife. Like people, a corn farm or any like amber waves of grain look very pretty, but like you said, they're a biological desert. They just sustain their own pests and are often covered in pesticides. Even if you're not doing any special rewilding, which you very much can and should do, if you just put solar farms on formal farmland, there's probably going to be more bulbs and bugs and stuff there. Studies keep finding this over and over, just because
And
we're
it's
not
not very
plowing
hard
it and stuff, we're getting pesticides.
I have great neighbors who have set up a little nonprofit that maintains plantings of pollinator-friendly weeds and flowers across solar farms in Vermont. And the numbers are really astonishing. I mean, you get out there in the field with an entomologist. Um, there are lots of bugs that we thought were extirpated from New England that somehow got word that their food supply was back on the menu and have reappeared. There are about 100 times as many pollinating insects per acre in those solar fields as there were in the industrial agriculture acreage that was its predecessor. And that means
Exactly.
that the farmers who neighbor those places get much better pollination, much better fruit set in the orchards, on and on and on. So this is we can take a bite out of, as we've already said, the climate crisis and the authoritarian crisis. And if we're smart, we can do a little bit about the biodiversity crisis at the same time.
Exactly. Absolutely. What you just said, like 100%, 100, not even 100%, 100 times more pollinating insects on a solar farm with wildflowers than in the surrounding industrial farms. That should be that should be like on the masthead of every newsletter every day. That's one of the most important facts about our time. This incredible win-win of the fact that we can now change our cropland to a more valuable crop that we need more of for energy and help biodiversity at the same time. It's spectacular. And yeah. So, and like you said, in this country, we are kind of losing on that. The U.S. Department of Agriculture isn't only not helping with agrivoltaics right now; it's actively trying to penalize it and like withdraw grant support to farms that try to make more money and rewild their land by putting solar panels on it. Like
No,
they'll
look, people should, if anybody has any doubts, I mean, there are countries in the world that aren't doing enough to, build up the renewable energy transition and so on and so forth. But there's no country on earth except the US that is working around the clock to actively stymie this revolution. And it's literally insane.
It is insane.
You know, the, that the country where climate science was really invented and the country where the solar cell and the industrial wind turbine were invented is the country that now is doing everything it can to make sure we don't solve the climate crisis with the tools that we invented. The country that is actively mortgaging our economic future and our kids' economic future by turning over lock, stock, and barrel these technologies to our theoretical chief adversary, China. There's never been a act of national economic self-sabotage on the same scale. And it should, even if for Americans who could care less about the environment, it should annoy the hell out of them on just grounds of pure economic patriotism.
Absolutely. Like, you do not have to care about or believe in climate change to care a lot about renewable energy anymore. It's like, do you want your country to have any stake at all in all of the world's most advanced technologies? Yes or no? Like, yeah, and the U.S. is run by people who are trying their damnedest to pick no. And
Yep.
like fossil fuel people sent billions of dollars to elect this maniac. The massive corruption and abuse of power to block permits for gigawatts of clean energy that the market wants to build. The alleged free market party is using statism to crush like the entrepreneurial desire to build clean energy, sort of against their own alleged principles. And what's amazing about that is even with the most ridiculously biased administration in history, they've blunted it, they've slowed it down, but they can't stop it. Solar and batteries will still 90% of all the new clean energy capacity that got built in the first quarter of 2026. And it's not nearly as much as it would have been and should have been and could have been, but there's not much new, but it's still growing. We still are
Yeah,
getting,
it is.
yeah,
It is. Those numbers are going to look different a year from now because the insane number of data centers that we're permitting and allowing them to put up their own incredibly inefficient diesel and gas generators are going to drive emissions very fast. Um, and I mean, it's worth Americans knowing our carbon emissions are growing
yeah,
even
that
as
is true.
China's fall, which is truly astonishing.
Yeah, yeah, it's insane. It is wild. And the, but America is not the world, and we
It-
have massively stupid stuff going on.
Yep.
And it is comforting to remember that like other places, other people keep moving the baton forward, and we can learn from them as soon as we have sane people in power. Like we are
Amen.
falling behind, but there are other people still racing ahead.
Amen. And this technology is not, we won't be able to be the technological leaders, but the technology will be available to us when sanity returns. Um,
Exactly, exactly.
so yeah.
So yeah, this is fascinating. Um, one other thing I wanted to talk to you about was we've covered so much. Um, Sort of on the specific local scale, one thing that's really broken through in the US lately that you've really covered a lot in your newsletter is balcony solar, which is
Mm,
again sort of the which has become sort of an unprecedentedly sort of fast spreading state legislative campaign this year from the
yeah.
led by the great folks at Bright Saver, increasingly Cora Stryker, Kevin Cho, and I think that is something that really speaks to a lot of people because it really highlights like the
It's a
yeah.
completely fascinating story.
Yeah.
Um, this stuff started in Europe, Germany particularly, 3 or 4 years ago. Now is absolutely taken for granted there. You just walk into IKEA and it's like a desk or a bed. Everybody just buys solar panel for their apartment, plugs into the wall, gets some significant percentage, 20%, 25% of the power their apartment's using. Illegal in this country, but Bright Saver and Third Act really teamed up after Sunday last September, and with the help of many people on this call, to um, to really get unprecedentedly quick legislative action. We managed to convince 10 state legislatures this spring. And for a new idea to get through 10 legislatures in 1 year is pretty close to unprecedented. And it's numerically, balcony solar is not big enough to make a huge dent in anything. But symbolically, it's super important, and it lets all kinds of people play in this solar revolution. And if Europe's any indication, it's very much a gateway drug to fuller participation. People get used to watching the app on their phone and seeing how much they're producing, and what they want to do is produce some more. So it was a real reminder that solar power remains extremely popular with Americans across political parties and across regions. Um, uh, Look, I live in rural America, as I said. I've spent some of my life in red state rural America and about half of it in kind of purple state rural America. That means I have lots of neighbors with Trump flags on the mailbox, and a not insignificant number of them also have solar panels on the roof. It's not because of their commitment to climate action. It's because my house is my castle, and it's a better castle if it has an independent power supply. And that's what lots of people who are buying balcony solar rigs, you can now buy them from Bright Saver at cost, brightsaver.org. So we're talking $283 or something for the most simple system. And again, no electrician required. You just lean it up against you zip tie it to your balcony railing or whatever it is and plug it into the wall.
And this is what people are doing in places like Pakistan and places like Africa. They're just buying solar panels, sometimes putting them flat on the ground if they don't have a metal thing to hang it on, and it's just plugging it in. Like you can just sort of brute force sounds negative, but you can just sort of take the most straight, direct path to get power from the sun. Like you keep saying, it is magical that we live in a world where the cheapest source of power is now pointing a sheet of glass at the sky. Like, and we can just do that. And in America, people are like, well, if we could do that, surely I'd be able to buy it at a big box store and just put it up in my backyard. And the barrier to that is not technological, it's legal. You can
Yeah.
do that in Germany. You can do that in Australia.
And now you
But
can do it in
yeah,
10 states in America. So that's,
exactly. Yeah,
and that'll be plenty to establish a national market, and we'll get another 20 states next year.
absolutely. Absolutely. We have many actions. We have routinely been publishing like every month actions on balcony solar at Climate Action Now, because that is, like you said, it's a gateway drug. It changes the paradigm, the narrative. Environmentalism is associated with sacrifice, with party pooples, with like this is a horrible, scary thing, and you need to change your life to stop it. And it is a horrible, scary thing. But increasingly, the change you need to make in your life is to get a new cool thing. That's a lot easier to sell. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. So, going forward, what else would you particularly like to share? I've asked you a bunch of questions. I have more in my mind, but like
Well,
what? Yeah.
I just want to emphasize the importance at the moment of political action. And just surveying the uh, gallery of views here of people who are taking part, I note that there's a fair number of people who fall into our third act category of people over the age of 60. Um, we now have 125,000 people across the country and great working groups in most states. It turns out that the level of political apathy in America is so high that having 400 people uh, connected, coordinated, working together is enough to be a huge force at the state legislature. And so we need to keep doing that work. As someone notes in the chat, California is about to be voting in the assembly on their balcony solar bill, and Third Act and others are working super hard on it. Scott Wiener has been the driving force behind it, and hopefully we'll make that happen. But we also, of course, need to start winning elections. This November, if the Democrats are able to retake the House and Senate, they won't be able to make policy. They won't be able to get a new IRA, but they may be able to exert enough power that they can at least stop some of the most insane attacks on wind farms and solar farms and things. They'll have some leverage of some kind. Right now, sanity has no leverage in our federal political system, and the only way to get it back is to vote for it. So for the next 90 days, that's the highest leverage work that any of us can be doing. And for those of us who are older, the Silver Wave Tour at Third Act, the kind of work we're doing is one way to jump in. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This next 90-day stretch is critical at every level in the elections. And I'm glad you pivoted to that because like all of what we've been talking about, all the awesome stuff clean energy can do, it really underscores that the 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 only block now is the politics, is the stranglehold, the regulatory capture of fossil fuel money on all and to a lesser extent other countries' political systems. And the takeover of media and the pollution of the information space and everything. But like the fundamentals are now so profoundly on our side that, like you said, a small group of committed people, a couple hundred people pushing a state legislature in an unexpected direction, can just overcome that last barrier, break that last wall to this incredible future that's already being built. And that is, I think, an empowering message, and one that we should really continue, as you do every day, to share with people that we can do this, that we can have nice things, we can have this is all waiting for us and available if we just stop the bad people from stopping us from having it.
Absolutely. Sam, I'm really impressed by the ongoing dialogue in the chat as we talk.
Oh yeah, great,
Lots
great,
and lots of
great chat.
people who are doing, who are involved in all kinds of important and interesting projects. And it's one of the reasons that Climate Action Now is um, such a useful outlet here. It's kind of across this collection of issues and possibilities. They're hard at work getting stuff done. So enormous shout out and thanks to everybody who's mobilizing in every way. Um, I I am also really grateful for the emphasis that you've been putting recently on wildlife in your Substack. We correctly said, people started saying some years ago, climate change isn't about polar bears. If all anyone thinks it's about is polar bears, they won't act on it. It's true that it's about lots and lots of other things, but it's also about polar bears and everything else that we are blessed to share this world with. And I think it bears reminding ourselves sometimes that one of the things we're trying to head off is an extraordinary extinction crisis that will otherwise overwhelm much of creation. I also think that it's beautiful to see that increasingly religious communities around the world understand this and are jumping in with both feet to help. I think in many ways, the one of the most important things over the last decade was the decision of Pope Francis to become a powerful climate and energy voice. And I'm really glad that his American successor, Leo, seems to be traveling down the same path. Indeed, I think the Vatican this year will, when it flips the switch on its big new solar farm outside Rome, become a fully solar powered nation. A small
Indeed.
one, but a one that punches above its weight. And so I think that those kind of signs are very important, and that we need to be really cognizant of the fact that people come to all of this from many, many different places, and have the many roads in to taking part in this great battle. Um, and and that's one of the things that gives me real hope going forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. All over the world, from no matter the starting point, people are converging on realizing this is an incredible thing, getting power from heaven, power from the sun.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Bill. Amen. Indeed.
Amen.
Amen.
What a pleasure to get to work with everybody today.
Yeah.
Many, many thanks, Amber, and all your colleagues. Many, many thanks. And everybody just stay as cool as you can. And, when the wildfire smoke is out there in the air, don't go out. That stuff is really bad for your lungs.
Bill, yeah, Bill, let me just jump in before you take off and before everybody leaves. I want to make sure all of you know that Climate Action Now has produced a whole new suite of services that are entirely free to help you and other groups that you belong to, your church, your community, your company, to escalate your climate action. And I'm going to ask Amber to show you where you can go to see what those services are on the Climate Action Now website. We have a menu called Services. And the services, we've created a suite of services for corporations, churches, nonprofits, any individual group, any company can have its own action carousel on their website. Or as we've done for Third Act, we've hosted our Third Act Oregon action carousel on the Climate Action Now website. We will help you with action parties. Bring your people together, have conversations like this, take action together. Those are the action parties. The resources that we've developed to finance Climate Action Now, we're making those available to other organizations. We do these things called group buy fundraisers. And we can help a church, we can help a nonprofit, any organization raise money for this effort and for this cause with tools that we've created. This is an amazing suite of tools and services that are not available to anywhere except here, and they are entirely free. Go to any of those, click on any of those images that you see there, find out more about them. And then there's a form where you can fill it out just to ask for more information. And Amber or I will go into a Zoom with you. We'll describe how these things work and how you can use them for your church, for your company, and so on. So please, this is a big deal. This is how we scale beyond just taking action on your on your iPhone by yourself to these other much larger groups. We are all in this together. We've got to do this together. So I just want to make sure you all know about this important new menu on the climate action. And Bill, my God, you are the guy. My word for you is preternaturally prescient. You've seen this coming since the 1980s. More than anybody, you've hung in there, doggedly determined. I'm so blown away at how persistent you have been and how effective you have been. And to everybody who's out there, if you're going to subscribe to any Substack other than Daily Dose of Climate Hope, it should be The Crucial Years from Bill McKibben, because this is my go-to place to get kind of an overview of what's happening in climate, and also to get Bill's thoughts. Anything that Bill has written is worth reading. So please go, if you don't subscribe to Crucial Years, go get it, but also go get the Daily Dose of Climate Hope. One nugget of positive news in your inbox every day, and one thing that you can do in seconds to make a difference. This is amazing stuff. Both of these guys, thank you guys and for coming together. And thank you, Climate Action Now community, for everything. So we'll see you all.
Carol.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you so
Bill.
much
Thank
for
you,
being
Bill.
here today, Bill. Thank you, Bill.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you
See
so much.
Thank
Live
you,
long and
everyone.
prosper, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Live long and prosper, right? See, I'm getting it, Sam.
Yeah. Live long and prosper. Thank
Live
you
long.
all.
We got the whole audience out there. Hey, can you do it with both hands?
I can do it with both hands. Yeah. Live long.
Of course
Absolutely.
you can.
Yeah.
Well, we
Impressive.
will. If we pull in this together, we will live long and prosper. So again, thank
Absolutely.
you, everybody. There'll be a recording. Share it with your friends. When you get the email, Amber will send out an email tomorrow. Don't just keep it for yourself. Forward it to all your friends. I mean, it was a pretty amazing session, right? You were able to sit down with Bill McKibben, the guy, and just hear a really kind of enthusiastic and knowledgeable conversation about the challenges we face and the positive things, the big good, but the big bad, but also the big good, right?
The big good.
So the
Absolutely.
United
We have
States
the
is,
big good.
as Sam keeps saying, the United States is not the only place in the world, right? There's the world and it's going gangbusters and there's lots of good stuff. Keep yourselves motivated by getting the positive news every day from the Daily Dose of Climate Hope. And just Google, or did we put it in the chat? I'm sure we've done that, Amber.
Yeah.
The link for people to go subscribe to the Daily Dose. Okay,
I'll put it again.
that's it. 3 o'clock. You guys rock. We'll see you next
All
time.
right. You all rock. Thank you so much.
Bye.
To everyone.
Sam, Kaylee, Amber, you want to meet in my private Zoom for a final debrief? Okay.
Sure. Let's just make sure we save the chat. Several people requested that we just include the chat logs, and a lot of people said really interesting stuff. There was someone from Afghanistan in there talking about how she just made it to join this on her phone. So there's lots of fascinating comments in the chat. We should make sure we save those.
I did
Yeah.
save it, and we'll send it
Right.
out with the recording tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
awesome.
Case, I see you out there. Case is our fantastic volunteer chief financial officer. By the way, everybody, I'm the CEO, but I'm also a volunteer. I don't make a penny off of this. This is all stuff that we're doing to try to create a livable world for ourselves and for our children and for the natural world. I'm so glad that Bill a lot of you don't know this, but in the Daily Dose, I've always told Sam on our homepage for the Daily Dose, always have a picture of a cute animal. And it doesn't have to, it could be a lizard, it could be anything, but let's always have a critter there on the homepage. And he's been doing that because we can't forget the natural world from which we come and on which we depend, right? And so I'm so glad that you made that point, Sam, and that Bill reinforced that the energy transition is also about preserving biological diversity and preserving the natural world. So yeah, that's great. Okay, so Climate Action Now team, I'll see you in my private Zoom. Otherwise, everybody else, stay tuned. Get our newsletter and stay tuned